Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Episode 13, Check the Wire podcast. Myself, DanGheesling, Ryan, Gary, Northernlion, the Turner. What's going on, man?
Not too much. Happy to be here. Full stop. Excited to have another week talking shop, getting inspired, learning tactics, et cetera, et cetera.
It's been a tactic-filled week of just execution and a lot of L's. But
I hear that.
Before we get into that, before we get to the win and loss of the week, what was the personal highlight of your past 7?
Well, I do have to say, one of the highlights of the past 7 for sure was I finally got the merch samples in the mail. So I got to, I really felt like I was on Shark Tank when I got like a hoodie, 2 hats, and then 4 different types of shirts. And it was like, which one do you want? And I'm doing research. Like, do we want 100% cotton? It feels nice on the skin. It's breathable, but also it doesn't machine dry that well. It might shrink up a little bit. But do we want to go 65% polyester? It's a little bit more expensive, but it breathes nicely. It's handled well in the machine, et cetera, et cetera. So that was, it made it very real for me to finally get those samples. So that's the highlight of my week. How about you?
Highlight of my week, I'd say business-wise, I think Unity was a lot of fun. It felt like it captured like the early PUBG days, and even so much where we didn't have a ton of success, but it was still a lot of fun. I felt like, every week I'm excited to do Unity, but there was just a little extra sauce in getting everyone together in the same page for to play a new battle royale in Warzone, and just really enjoyed it. Like, I found myself like, without that hard stop that I had we had a little party at my house for Cinco de Mayo with me and the boys, but without that, I could have been going till 4 a.m. No questions. But so that was a highlight.
I think we took a shot on Tuesday. I think we all went in expecting it was going to be like 50% wins, and then we kind of got dumped on. I think it's just that punch to the stomach we need, so that next week we can come back and be like, okay, it's not free, it's a grind, but we're going to get there, and we can focus on having fun. And now that hopefully like the pressure of getting the win is a little bit less there.
Yeah, but I still feel like a shaken up 2-liter bottle of pop. Like, I'm just like, I'm waiting for that, because I haven't had a win. I know one of us has had a win off camera, or not as Unity, but it's just, I don't know. I've come to cherish like the rare like firsts, and just really enjoy what's going on, as opposed to always like looking forward.
Yeah.
But since you brought it up, I do want to, before we talk about W's and L's, when it comes to the merch, there's been leaking a little bit. What's been your internal process about how you want to present your merch when it comes out? Because it's a big deal. You haven't had merch in a couple of years, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to, so I'm being considered in the way that I do the merch, but I'm not being super like lock and key. Like, I'm not going to show anything until like it's actually available for purchase, mostly because I'm just excited by it. So I'm definitely like, I didn't take pictures of the samples and stuff like that and go like, this will be available in 2 months. Because I think you run the risk of people like getting hyped for it, and then 2 months later they're like, I don't really want it anymore. I'd rather have them able to basically spend the money as soon as they see it, if they want to buy it, before they can think twice about it.
I mean, it's a fair thing to talk about, because and we talked a lot about it last week, but you're invested in this. It's not just like, hey, print on demand, forehead, it doesn't matter. You got to make sure you take care of your deal. So that's cool. So, but I did see like it's leaked a little bit. What has been your, did you intend for that to happen? It was like a little bit.
Yeah, it's just, I'm not really talking about it, but it's just a little bit of, just a sneak peek, and maybe like some, I don't want to call it like viral marketing, but let it slip out there a little bit, and then people might capture it and spread it and get a little pogged up. So, and then the other thing is like, I do laundry like once a week, and then we got 4 clean shirts in the mail. So I was like, dude, I could just, there's my wardrobe from like Monday to Thursday, no problem.
Do you think, and I'm not referring to anything in particular, do you think there's other streamers or content creators within the gaming or non-gaming space that lets things slip for virality purposes?
What do you mean by that?
I'm just throwing something out there. Just
I think that's an interesting question. Oftentimes, when a streamer says something controversial, a lot of people think it's a marketing play in order to get some attention. I'm not that cynical, I think. I think I'm of the opinion when people say like there's no such thing as bad press. I very much disagree. I think there's a lot of bad press. Um, and you might be able to court a certain audience by constantly courting controversy, but for the most part, I think my Occam's razor on that is that a lot of streamers, in my opinion, have an inflated sense of their own importance and think I have to weigh in on issues that I'm not necessarily an expert in and get themselves into trouble without thinking about it in advance and then probably regret it later.
I feel the same way. Like anytime I see something on Twitch where it may, or anywhere where it's like something slips or there's something controversial, I'm always like, okay, you're going to get a hit of attention and, you know, maybe a surge, but is that necessarily the type of audience you want? And I guess an example I can think of that's inverse of that. And this clip that I saw that really sticks to me, it was a viral clip that went, but it was on the flip side. It wasn't controversial. It was a Call of Duty player or someone playing Fortnite with a kid, and the kid kind of like blew it, and he's like, oh, I stink, and the streamer's like, no man, like you're fine, like you played great, and like that went viral, and to me like that would be something that, okay, hey, depending on your audience, that's something that's good that you would want to happen versus, you know, something controversial because you're just gonna bring. I guess the only thing I can think of, and this is a no judgment zone, but if you run a lot of giveaways on your show, you're going to get like a primary portion of your audience that's only coming there for that versus, you know, I think that's how I think of it.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that for sure.
But I think in your case, I think it was just, you know, because I check all the Reddits and stuff, you know, someone screen capped your shirt slipping, you know, and
quote unquote.
Yeah, but I think that was like, that's towards like the Fortnite Call of Duty thing. I mean, it's not controversial, but just like people are getting excited about it, which I think is pretty cool.
Just little rumblings, and then we'll hit them with like when it's super ready to go, we'll hit them with the real marketing blitz where there's like, you know, not professionally produced photos or anything like that, but nicely framed photos, like people wearing the merch. Here's a link where you can go to pick it up, by the way, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'm trying to think, I don't think we talked about this last week, but did we talk about the merch slip that has nothing, like that had people fired up?
We did. That happened on Saturday.
Oh, so tell us.
I mean, I don't know. I got like 12 L's of the week. So we can transition here. Okay. So like my big L of the week is community. And you and I have a very similar opinion on community. And I think if anything, I have the aspiration to take your philosophy of the community more to heart, much differently than a lot of streamers. I think you have the capability to separate yourself well enough from your audience that you like function as a performer, and then you have the distance that allows you to moderate chat without actually, I'm trying to think of like how to, you don't have an adversarial relationship with your community is one way that I would describe that. I'm 50-50, and then like I've said, maybe like once a year it gets bad. And this was like the bad week, hopefully, for 2020. And then everybody comes together and heals off of that. And then everything's great for like 11 months. And we'll see what happens next year. But yeah, so like a series of L's on community.
What were the specifics?
Yeah. Saturday, we got our merch samples in the mail, included from the printer as a nice little gesture / you know,
surprise and delight. Yeah.
Surprise and delight. We got a baby onesie because Kate is expecting in the fall, and the baby onesie had like the katakana for lion on it, and we were like, that's cute. So Kate took a photo. She sent the photo to my mom, and then also like she posted the photo on Twitter just to be like, this is so cute that the printer threw it in. And then like 2 threads popped up on my subreddit. One of them was not that bad. It was just like, hey, here's like a little merch preview of this like baby onesie. But then it got a little spicy because everyone was like, I don't like that it's just using Japanese text because it looks cool and I probably wouldn't wear this and blah, blah, blah. And in my head, I'm like, of course you wouldn't. It's for a baby. And like, that's not, we're not selling baby onesies. This is just like a little thing that was included inside of the merch pack to begin with. But that one was like, I'm like, I get it. But people are literally like, I got frustrated because they're arguing over like the merch that isn't even the merch. It's like they concocted the idea of the merch in their head and then we're like, I hate it. Or like, hey, you can't hate it. It looks cool. You know? And I'm like, it's not real. You're wasting your time. It's a waste of your one life on planet Earth. And then the other one that was like, it got worse was like how do people feel about the fact that his merch has Japanese on it? Is that like cultural appropriation? Is that acceptable to be, co-opting a language of a visible minority in North America and then selling it? And I was just like, oh my God, is baby onesie that's not even for sale. So that was like, I got pre-tilted on Saturday for sure. And then on Tuesday, there was another thread that popped off that was like, is anyone upset that there's less NLSSs? And I want to clarify because I went off on it a little bit in a measured way on Tuesday, where I was like, it's a bad thread because the thread itself is civil, but just by asking the question in that way, you open up like yourself to a lot of criticism. Like the way that I talked about it was like, imagine if you had like a group chat with like everyone from your high school and you were like, hey, does anyone else think that like Tim is not funny? Some people might jump in and be like, hey, yeah, and Tim's looking at all the comments. And people are like, well, I used to like Tim, but Tim's not, I don't think Tim has it anymore. I haven't listened to anything Tim said since, like 1998. And I'm like, if you're not Tim and you're reading the thread, you're like, there's nothing wrong with this. People are just giving their opinion on an abstract content creator who's not a real person that doesn't exist on planet Earth and have feelings and emotions and et cetera, et cetera. But I think I got tilted over the thread, but I responded in the thread in a way that I thought was productive and very honest about the reason that there's been less NLSSs lately. Which, for Cliff Notes basically comes down to as people get older, we're talking about a show that started, I was 24. I had different priorities, but some of the people on the show, like Rob was probably 22. I'm trying to think of like Apollo was probably like 21 or 22 the first time he was on the show. Like the older you get, well, let me rephrase. When you're younger, you're just like, I'm invited to this cool thing. I'm happy to be a part of it for free. You get older, you got more responsibilities. The reality of the NLSS is that nobody really does that well from being on the show during that period, except for me. I get a disproportionate amount of compensation for sure. Everybody else is they get exposure and it probably helps their personal brand, but they could also be streaming during that time to a much larger audience on their own side. But anyway, so I went in and I responded to it, but we had a bad week with community. Let's leave the L at that. So the lesson that I've learned there is still in progress. I'm still taking the lesson. I don't know. And I'm interested in your feedback, actually. I don't know how to contextualize it. For me, what I'm thinking about right now is basically last year when this happened, we had extra moderation and it's made the community much more positive, but also simultaneously, I'm well, it didn't prevent kind of a blow up like this in the future. So maybe I just have to be okay. Here's my options. I just have to be okay with this happening once every 6 months or 12 months. And I just have to accept that inevitably there's going to be people who care what I would describe a little bit too deeply about the entertainment that's being made and the personal machinations behind it. Or if I have to be starting, whenever I decide on this, it's more important for me to distance myself from the content, not to preserve my own mental health, but rather, I guess, from the community, I should say, not to preserve my own mental health, but because I think there is a certain argument for they should be able to talk about the entertainment they enjoy critically and not have to worry about always sugarcoating it so that it comes across in a way that's not offensive to the person that it's about.
The only thing I could say about observing, and without giving out too much backwire stuff, is that, what I've seen, something like this happened last year. Normally there's a heated, I wouldn't say heated discussion, but there's a discussion in Discord with, on the private back channel, and you're I wouldn't call it venting, but you're you're turned up a little bit.
Yeah.
And this time, I didn't see that. What I saw was a pointed response that I think a lot of people, what I saw, respected. I mean, for people that didn't read it, Ryan wrote in detail, probably 4 or 5 paragraphs about breaking things down without really just very analytically, without any emotion. And I think what I saw from that, whether you realize it or not, what you did is you set a tone for the community on hey, look, you can be critical, but here's the specific reasons why. But my question, what I'm interested in to learn is that how did you process that versus before? Because I don't know, maybe like, maybe you vented somewhere else, but I felt like I didn't see that this time around.
I mean, so on Tuesday's stream, I think the way that I deal with it in a broad sense is by actually engaging and talking about it. If something's, I've always said, and I said this on Tuesday, if something's like just troll-esque, who cares? Like it's not like real criticism. It's just some person that's like, you suck. It literally like it has no impact on me at all. The thing that's more tilting or more like emotionally affecting is always when somebody's like a big fan of your content, but they're like, hey, this part sucks. And then it kicked off a thread that had like, I don't know, like 400 comments or something in it, where a lot of them were like positive, but then like a lot of them were like, in my opinion, unfair in the sense that they were like, yeah, his content has sucked more lately. I haven't watched any in 6 months. And I'm like, well, how do you know? If you haven't watched any, I mean, there's just so many questions that percolate in my head. Like, if you haven't watched any in 6 months, how do you know it sucks? And if you haven't watched any in 6 months, why are you on the subreddit? Like, surely there's got to be a better use of your time in that situation. But I think to circle back, the way that I deal with it is by engaging. So at first, when I saw the thread, I was like, here we go again. But then I sat down and I typed out the response, and I thought the response was good. And then I talked about it on the Tuesday show as well. And I just talked about it frankly in the way that, like, in a respectful way. I didn't say like, maybe I said shut up a couple of times, but there was always a little bit preceding it where I was like, this is why this person should shut up. But for the most part, it was just like, it's because I think it's just interesting to pull the veil back sometimes for people and be like, what I do is play video games on the internet to entertain people. And this is the very strange part of the job that comes along with it that you would never, ever expect. But I think sometimes people just get lost in the moment. And if they get asked for criticism about something, they can easily either pile on or take the opposite side. And then if they really took like 30 seconds and just sat down and were like, what am I actually talking about? And you remembered that it's just a guy playing video games on the internet, cracking jokes and trying to entertain people, you would be like, this is not worth really jumping into the pile here. So I think engaging with that stuff head on and giving honest and like respectable answers and stuff like that helps to curtail that to some extent.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. It's just, but I think it's on you, right? So you could, if you choose to kind of walk away and not respond to that, it's like, then you got to deal with not dealing with that issue, right? So in my opinion, whether it's right, wrong, or different, I think by you dealing with it, I think people are going to, maybe what I think will happen is next time something like that pops up, you may see more people responding to that type of a thread from the community like you would. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're almost you set the path, and so other people may respond similar to you to kind of maybe quell that, or at least say, hey, look, what do you mean by this? But also it's just a matter of, I don't know why, but I got upset about it. And I don't know if it's because I'm defensive of you or what, but I always feel like, sometimes people forget that, it's an actual human. It's a little bit different, like with a radio or a disc jockey or something like that. Like there's like a missing connection. It's a one-way street. Where Twitch and YouTube, it's a two-way street. Like if there's a disc jockey or DJ you don't like on the radio, like you could call in, but that person's just going to roast you. It's not like there's threads and threads of, sometimes, I don't say intimate, but, details about like knowing what's going on or what they appear to be. So I feel like sometimes people forget that. And my thing is, and I always tell people, is just sometimes you got to take it easy on the broadcaster, because eventually you may do that enough and the person just be like, I'm done. I don't need it. And I'm not saying that's you, but I don't know. I feel fortunate that, and I don't know. And I don't think it's an easy thing. Like I couldn't imagine you sitting there typing that response was like, you're sipping on an iced tea,
having a great day. Yeah.
It's like, all right, here's the problem. But I think the other thing too that's important why we're talking about is that it's a problem, but it's also a good problem to have, because it means people care, right? And that people care enough to write that. It wasn't a 2-cent troll message, But I think what it made me think about, and I don't say this to upset anyone or anything like that, but I thought, okay, hey, look, if I'm doing the exact same thing I'm doing 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, like, I don't want to be doing that. Like, I mean, I love Tarkov, but if my show looks identical to the way it does now in 5 years, I just don't see that happening. I couldn't see myself enjoying that. Not saying that I'm not going to play Tarkov, but I just, like, things are going to grow and change and evolve. And you hope, at least for if I'm watching some entertainment, like, I hope that it gradually gets better and better and doesn't stay the same. And I think in the world that you and I operate in, is if you stay the same long enough, you find people tuning out, right? You know, I mean, we could circle back to, you know, the vlog in January about, like, hey, you're gonna try some new stuff, and it works. But
I'm kind of dealing with that right now too, because like Eden is coming up to an end, and people are like, "Don't end it. There's still more content." And I'm trying to like tease it out there. I'm like, if this keeps going on, you're gonna like enjoy the meal for a while, but the rest of the numbers are gonna like pull down and flag over the course of the next few years, or next few months, I should say. But anyway,
but yeah,
it resonates with me.
Yeah, no, it just when I read that and just took a step back, I'm like, if I'm doing the exact, like, I want to be doing what I'm doing, but I hope it's better, and I hope it's different, and I hope it changes, because otherwise it means like we're probably stagnant. And I don't know. I don't ever want that to happen. I'm always trying to push, but it wasn't until that conversation went down, or that whole thing went down, that I'm like, man, I guess I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's natural that things change. I mean, that's I tried to highlight in the thread, like, you know, it's a little different for you, I think, because you started, you know, you weren't like in your early 20s or like late teenage years when you started. But like, really, when you're like in your early 20s, for most people, they're like, I'll work for free. I'll sacrifice, you know, like 3 hours of sleep a night to grind this out. You know, you have less financial responsibilities. Usually you have less family responsibilities, and you're just at a different place in your life where you're like, you know, I'm not necessarily knocking out like a mortgage payment, or I'm not like, you know, my family members are maybe less likely to be ill because they're younger, because I'm younger, you know. So like your priorities change over time. And the part of the frustrating thing for me in the thread for sure was like, yes, there have been like less multiplayer shows, but it's also just kind of like I don't have responsibility for that, in the sense where I was like, the whole catalyst was on Monday we only played Warzone. The reason we only played Warzone is because we had a docket planned, and then one of the people on the show was like, hey, I've got like a family emergency situation came up. So with like 15 minutes to go, we threw a Hail Mary, and then like over the course of the show, it just became a Warzone show the whole way. And then on like Wednesdays have been solo shows for like a little while, because Rob's computer exploded like 2 weeks ago. It's not like I'm not going to go to New York and like give Rob a new power supply or whatever. Like, it's something that he has to handle on his own. So, and it's not to put blame on other people, but rather just to be like I don't have control. I can't force people to be on the show. And even moreover, like I said in the thread, I don't want to force people to be on the show. I want them to feel like they can ask to be on the show. And if they're invited, there's a chance they'll say yes. But I want them to also build up their own thing on the side, so they're not wholly dependent on this thing that is they don't have control over. Like, I like it being my own thing. And then also they have their own pillars that they've built themselves that they can rely on. And occasionally they come together.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting point you brought up, and I want to get your take on it. So I don't know. I think we're maybe on opposite ends, but you talked about like people coming on your show, they're automatically exposed to probably a 5 to 10x larger audience minimum. Let's just call it. So let's say normally someone streams for 500. Now they're probably somewhere around 5,000, maybe 250 to whatever. So it's they're much larger exposure. And then you talk about someone coming on that show, giving up their time where maybe they could be streaming on their end and, you know, getting more subscriptions or building their community or whatever. Versus, so that exposure versus you actually, or anyone actually paying them to come on a show. What's your take on that in terms of, because you've had a lot of guests on the show over a lot of time. Some people were on a ton, some people were on not. I don't want to talk about specifics of that, but what's your take on your value proposition that you offer people and how you rectify that in your head?
Yeah, I mean, I don't exist as far to the opposite of you as I think you might think. Like, I know I don't want to say a fan of unpaid labor. in the sense that, like, you know, I think you're more positive about working for exposure in some extent than the average person is right now, for sure. I'm somewhere in the middle. Like, if I was going to be on somebody's podcast as like a guest, I would never ask for compensation for that. I would be like, if I needed $200 to go on their show, I just wouldn't. I would rather not go on the show. I would rather go on the show because it's going to be a good partnership, or maybe it'll give me some exposure or something like that. However, like, definitely over the course of the NLSS, I have paid people to be on, and I think it's worked okay. But it's like when you know, maybe like a year and a half ago, I asked people, like, in the back channel, I was like, I want, like, here's the thing. There's some guilt because I benefit disproportionately from the NLSS financially. Like, for the 3 hours I put in, I get paid way more than anybody else. And someday, if you look at the squad stream, sometimes the squad stream, I'll have like 4,000. Everybody else will have like 30. Like, it's just, there's a huge discrepancy in the numbers. There is an argument that is like, you know, I brought the audience in the first place.
Well, yeah, let me say it for you. The argument is, like, the way I see it, just in your lineage, you built the audience on YouTube. You did.
Yes.
No one else did. And then essentially the majority of that YouTube came to Twitch, or the YouTube audience came to Twitch. So go ahead. So.
And I mean, I have multiple philosophies on this. One of it was, you know, I think that it's, yes, I mean, I built the foundation in the first place for this thing to exist, but I could also, like, you know, channel some of that financial momentum into helping other people have stability that I didn't have, and they can use that as a scaffolding to build their own thing more comfortably than they would have if they, you know, were getting no money coming in. But the long and short of it is, I asked people in the back channels, I was like, would you guys even want to be paid on the NLSS? And then people were like, mixed. They're like, it would be nice, but at the same time, what I want to avoid happening is a dynamic where, you know, if you're on the show, let's say you get paid like $100, and then on Wednesday, like 7 people offer to be on the show, and then I choose 3 people, like I'm picking like day laborers or something like that, and the other 5 people are like, well, screw me, you know? Like, I guess I'm gonna struggle a little bit more this month because I didn't get the appearance fee for being selected for like a Wednesday show. And I was like, I think that there's some validity in that, to be honest. Like, I do want, and I mean, the other thing is, and this came up in the back channel as well, which is like, you know, if you're paid to be on the show, you're compelled to be on the show, essentially. Like, you have to be on the show. And I think that's totally fine, to be honest. Like, to have an arrangement with somebody that is like, hey, if you show up Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, you know, you'll get whatever percentage of this cut of the show. But at the same time, I don't really think anybody is open to that right now. Like, my temperature take of the situation is that, you know, if I ask like Apollo, for example, I think he would honestly be like, I would rather just be on Mondays and not get paid, and then be forced to be on it Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, which I think makes sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would, having not even been in that position, right, where you have to make those decisions, I just think my take on it is it would make the dynamic a little weird, right? Because, like, right now it's like you, like, running a show and kind of hanging out, but it's not called like the Friends show. It's called the Northernlion Live Super Show. People are tuning in to see you, but I don't know. I'm on the, I know we're kind of in different ranges, but for me, like, it's like Twitch Rivals. I would have done Twitch Rivals for free, because why? You get an opportunity that some may say money can't buy, right? Can you buy the opportunity to get in front of an audience in a natural environment that's not sponsored, that's not, like, you know, weird or manufactured, to have a shot to grow, you know? And so I don't know. I empathize with you in terms of, like, wanting to help people, and if someone's struggling and things like that. But at the same time, like, I don't know. My view on it, you'll hear me say this time and time again, is such a long-term game, right? So sure, I may not make $100 or $200 or whatever to be on a podcast, but if you do that enough and you hone your craft, like, people are going to start to be around. Like, so, you know, and I'm not going to say things individually, but a lot of people have been on your show and they've maximized that opportunity, and some people have been on the show and haven't, you know, and I feel like that's number one, none of my business, but number two, they're in control of that, right? And so I don't know. I just look at, it's all opportunities, right? So when when you decide to work with someone, you're saying, hey, look, I endorse this person and I want to showcase this person to my community because I like them and I think you may like them. And to me, that's, I mean, I don't know what more you would want. And I don't know. I don't, and part of it, I think I'm a little more hardline where if like, hey, look, Twitch streaming isn't working for you full time, then get a part-time job and maybe not stream as much. And maybe it takes you 5 years instead of grinding your face off for 2 years. I don't know. I think it's an interesting conversation, and we talk about it all the time. And in terms of, you know, and I know it fires people up, and it kind of leads into maybe the next thing is that, you know, people don't want to work for free, but essentially when someone goes on your show, that's what they're doing. Like, kind of, you know, they may do it for fun, but they're also kind of working for free in the hopes that maybe they just enjoy it, or maybe that they think, you know, if they do it enough and people like them, that more people are going to be drawn to them. So I think it's a really sticky situation, but at the same time, I just look at it as an opportunity. But I think for you, it probably is a lot more difficult to sit in your shoes saying like, hey, look, like the show does really well. But the question, I guess, to you that you have to answer is, the show does, and I don't want to say it for you, but the show does well with or without people. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, to some extent, for sure.
Like,
I mean, I think I like what you said, for sure. However, I do have to recognize that if I flipped the situation and if someone was like, hey, do you want to be on my show for free when you could be streaming in your own time? Like, I'm just thinking of like the optics. I think I would do what a lot of people have done is like, you know, if their audience was large enough or we had an overlap enough where I thought people would also be interested in me, I might do it like once a month, or I might do it like once every 3 months, but I definitely would not be consistently available for sure. But I think what's nice, like I really like the arrangement that, like I'm going to use Apollo as a case study again, because I think it's a really good example. You know, he has been on the show a lot and is still on the show a lot. And he doesn't get paid. However, you know, that's why I was stoked when he invited me to the Checkpoint League, because I'm like, now this is an opportunity. He's organizing something, and I'm not donating my time because I'm streaming on my own end as well. And if anything, those streams do really well because of the scaffolding that he put in place in order to make it more engaging in the first place. But it's an opportunity for me to give my all, almost as like a thank you for him giving his all on the show over the years as well. So I like almost like the quid pro quo of like, you know, he's been on the show and he's done me a favor. Now, like when he pitches me on something, I'm going to be more likely to do it as a result, instead of, you know, the other way where maybe like if we had like a financial arrangement, I would look at that. Maybe not. I would look at that and be like, you know, I don't work on Fridays. I don't do streams on Fridays. I only do, you know, videos on Fridays. So maybe I don't want to do it. So I think instead it's an opportunity to give back.
Yeah, no, and I think it's at the end of the day when it comes to stuff like this, I always listen to kind of like the internal meter. And I was talking to Jay earlier today just about something, and we were talking about whatever we were talking about, and he's like, I did something and it didn't feel right. And so when I think when you get to that point, that's when you address it, right? So, you know, when it comes to going on, you know, Apollo's Mario League or Checkpoint League, when he asked, I'm like, dude, number one, thank you so much for asking me. Number two, like in my head, I'm like, okay, can I squeeze this in? Is this ideal? And I'm like, okay, hey, this is going to take an hour away from this, but I don't care, because it's like, I want to, number one, it's fun. I want to be a part of it. Number two, I think it'll make a better show and like I'll provide value to him. And three, part of me was like, man, like he's putting himself out there. He's doing something different. He's putting in a ton of work. Why wouldn't I do this? Even if it meant like an hour more that I had to work or whatever. So I'm with you on that. But to me, like the value prop is like someone's doing a lot of work and then they're like, hey, come on. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you provide the scaffolding for a lot of people, right? And I don't know. I just think it's the exposure versus money thing is like people are, I don't say people, sometimes someone can be very quick to turn that down and to take an opportunity because, well, I'm not getting paid. Well, my question to you, and I don't know if I ever told this story, but I'll tell the story. So I wanted to have, for 2 Christmases ago, there's a story I always tell my son. I just made it up and I tell it to him every night. And for Christmas, I wanted to have the book made and illustrated and stuff like that. So I reached out to a couple people that I knew were artists. I'm like, hey, what would you charge me to, illustrate this book? And it was literally like, I don't know how much work it was, a day or two. And they're like, well, I looked this up and this is what professional illustrators get paid. And I'm like, have you ever done a book before? I'm like, no. I'm like, okay, let me look around somewhere else. So I went to someone else. I'm like, hey, what would you illustrate this for? He's like, well, hey, my normal rate is this. I think it's going to take this amount of hours. So let me do it that way. And I'm like, I just looked at it like, if you're asking to get paid for something you're already not getting paid for, then that doesn't make any sense, right? You have to be in a position to build yourself up where people are willing to pay you for something. So I paid the artist that gave me his hourly rate and did that, versus like the other person I really wanted to take a shot on because I knew they were just starting out, but they gave me a ridiculous quote and I didn't want to like get into like why that's not really how it works. It's like asking Kanye West to make a beat versus someone I found on YouTube, that may just be starting. I don't know. So I get fired up about it. I know it rubs people the wrong way, and it's going to lead into our next conversation, which, we put on there is talk about hiring people.
Yeah.
And so the best decision I've made in the past 2 years is I hired 2 people and pay them. One works on a lot on audio. That's Tyler. He produces his podcast. So essentially, to pull back the curtain, Ryan and I do the live stream. I set stuff up. I record the file, and I send it to Tyler. That's it. We do nothing more. We don't rip the audio. We don't title it. He does everything. And then the other guy is Zane. He does a lot of video stuff for me. But the way those guys started is they started working for free. And I didn't say, hey, look, like grind out 100 videos. Like send me 1 or 2 things. Like I think I asked for, hey, I put something out there on Twitter. Like, hey, put together a cut, send it to me. If you want to do this. And Tyler started out for a couple months just like, because he didn't know what he was doing, right? So both of these guys that I've worked with, they started out like they were okay, and then eventually we got to a point after a little bit, they're like, all right, like let's start paying you. And now they're really good. But if they would have just said no the first month or two, then they wouldn't be integral parts of what I do. And 2, I think as individuals, like their skills are tremendous, like they've grown so much. And so, but just to be in that position, I just feel like a lot of people maybe shoot themselves in the foot. I'm not saying like work for free, like 50, 100 hours a week, but if there's little opportunities, you just don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, did Tyler think he'd be producing this? I don't know. But he put himself out there to do it. And I know, a lot of people are saying that's a yikes for me and like, don't work for free. But if you want to get into a business or something that's hard to get into, like you got to start somewhere, right? And I'll always quote Edmund McMillan. Edmund worked for free, and I think where the context gets a little lost is I understand I'm empathetic. Not everyone can do that, right? Whether your family situation, you have bills to pay, but if you want to do something like we're doing and you're watching Netflix 8 hours a day, go for it. Like, dude, do you? But if you say you want to do something, you got to find a way in. But this has been on the docket for a while, and
we've avoided it because it's a little spicy.
It's very spicy. But I'm also like, since I'm on this mini rant, anything that I've done that has really flourished, or I've worked for free. Like I was able to earn a free master's degree because I spent my undergrad 4 years volunteering to work for the football team. Like I got paid very little. Like I think it worked to a couple bucks an hour, but the connections I made, allowed me to do that. I've worked for free so many times in my life that it's given me so much experience to allow me to make decisions and be in a position to be successful, versus if I just said, no, I can't do that. But I know there's going to be a lot of pushback on this. So I just want to clarify by saying, hey, look, I'm saying if you have the time and it's between messing around or pursuing something you want to do, I would say put yourself out there. But
I think we agree and disagree. I'm definitely further. I mean, I don't know. Like the way you've put it out is very reasonable for sure. And I think there is the culture for sure on Twitter especially, which is what I'll speak to because I don't work in a creative field. Like I'm not in art or music or etc. editing. The culture on Twitter is definitely like never work for free in any situation. And I agree to that in principle because a lot of the cases you see are the world's worst, like choosing beggars. They'll like a random person will just DM an artist with like 200,000 followers and be like, hey, can you draw like my avatar? And they're like, sure, I charge like $100 for, just doing the sketch. And they're like, oh, that's ridiculous. I only have like 250. Can you work with that? And they're like, sorry. And then they get toxic. So that's like the worst possible situation that is like everybody agrees that's just terrible. But in some situations, I do think it's okay to work for free. Like in all the situations that you've described, to work at least a little bit for free.
Yeah.
In all the situations you've described, it is a person doing something for someone, I don't want to say that they idolize, but for somebody that they actually like, they enjoy their content and maybe they're passionate about it in the first place. And it is building stuff that works into their personal portfolio in case they don't end up working for you. But in your case, you actually ended up hiring them. I think for the most part, where I am, like, I draw the line is like, if someone offers to do something for me and they do it for free, I don't feel guilty at all. We've had people that have come up to us just because of the not come up to us, but email us because of the podcast. And they'll be like, hey, I want to make you a website for free. Like your conversation like got me inspired. I want to build you this website for free. I'm not like, a professional web designer, but I'm like a first year student in university. I can use the website for my portfolio. And it's maybe like a situation where we can both benefit. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm not going to trip over and be like, I didn't even want this. Now I'm going to give you $1,500 to build the website just so I don't feel bad. If I commission something though, like for sure, I would never suggest free and I would push back. And I have pushed back from people that are like, oh, don't worry, I'll just do it. I'm like, well, like at the very least, let me pay you like what minimum wage is here for what you would describe as billable hours. But like, I don't know. I have complicated feelings about it for sure. Cause like I've talked about the fact that I'm going to like probably hire an editor if I want to keep making clips and stuff like that when the baby comes, cause I'm just not going to have that much time. But like the optics of YouTube are honestly like, I kind of have to underpay, if that makes sense.
In what
like
way?
I can't afford to pay. I do pretty well on YouTube. If I get like an edited video a week, it's not going to make enough to compensate somebody just on an economic level. If they live in the US or they live in Canada or like, Western Europe, it's not going to generate anything in the black. Honestly, I'm gonna be taking a deficit to put out that kind of content, and then hoping at some point that it's a loss leader to get like more people invested. So realistically, to hire an editor, I'm gonna have to, commission somebody who is, either a student or they live in a part of the world where the cost of living is much lower, or somebody who works super efficiently, so it only takes them like 1 or 2 hours to make something, and their billable rate is not that high. So it's, it is complicated. I don't think I would ask someone to do it for like, I'm not really comfortable having like an intern for sure. I would feel, just to be frank, I would feel like that's exploitative, but definitely like realistically speaking, at some point, like I would have to, I don't want to use the exploit word for myself, but I would have to take advantage of the fact that there's, costs of living differences around the world. It's pretty much, it would be impossible for me on YouTube to hire like a 30-year-old, college educated video editor to edit my own videos. They would find the rate that I would have to pay them to make it worthwhile for me. Even just to break even, they would be insulted by the rate, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. The way I approach it and the way I think about it is when I do something like that, the value proposition to me, it's like when I brought people on, like once they're on, they're on. And so unless something goes terribly wrong, like I'm always trying to find ways, and it's like a game to me. Like I need to give them way more value than they're giving me, whether it's monetarily or however I can. And so I don't know. And I just feel different about that, where like a lot of the times the process of me hiring someone, it's just a matter of like seeing who really wants to do it. So the way I found from what I remember, I'm sure they can both correct me, but the way I found Zane is I think I said, hey, look, I'm looking for an editor. This is what I'm looking for. Just send me your best shot at editing this clip. And I don't think I don't know if he worked for free or not, but people are like, well, Dan, you're asking someone to edit your video for free. I'm like, no, I'm asking someone to show me what they can do so I can know if they can hire them or not. Otherwise, I could be paying someone who doesn't know what they're doing. And ultimately that's on me to figure that out. But it's just, I've found out a way to see who's either, and it's also a compatibility thing. Like I brought on people before and I've hired them to do something and paid them. And I'm like, even though the work was okay, I'm like, it wasn't really a good fit, and that's okay. But, and I don't want people to think too that, when I bring on someone as an intern or whatever, which I have no plans. When I bring on someone as an intern, it's because I'm like, all right, I need to fill this as a paid position, but I got to find the person. And then if I got to train the person and figure it out, it's a long road. And I think eventually what happens is how I see things happening is that as things grow, like it's now a team, right? As the Twitch channel grows, as things grow, like they're coming along with it. And I don't want to put other people's business out there, but like one of the two guys that work for me is like, hey, I've been working for you, I know I'm getting paid. He's like, I'm going to get a full-time job. Can I put you as a reference? I'm like, yeah. And then he came back, gets a job, and he's like, the only way he got this job is because he had a portfolio of stuff that he already got paid for that got him in the door to something that he normally wouldn't have done. So I don't know. But at the same time, like, and I'm always like, I don't talk about this stuff because I know it can be very divisive, but at the same time, I just want people to understand, like, I'm a person that the way I'm dialed is I believe that if there's something you want to do, you can do it. You just have got to find a way and be able to work your way in. And for some people, it's not as easy, right? So some people, like I said, they have a ton of financial obligations, and to be able to work for free, you could say is like a privilege, right? But at the same time, I also feel like at some point, everyone's got an hour or two in their day. Maybe they have to take it away from something they enjoy, but that can be enough to get you going. And I feel like if you can do that and you're willing to wiggle a little on that, I think you'll see a lot of growth. But I just know,
I agree. Like I really do. And like I straddle, like, not to be like just enlightened centrist about it, but I straddle like both ends of this because I have taken volunteered work. I've never commissioned something and then been like, see ya. But I have taken volunteered work, for sure. And then I also
can you give me an example, like a thumbnail or something?
I'm trying to think. Well, like I guess like the most recent one that comes to mind is like there was an animator who came to me and was like, hey, I want to make like I think it was for Check the Wire, actually. They were like, I'm inspired by the Check the Wire conversation. I want to make you like an animation. And then we talked about it a little bit and we're just like, what would you like to see? Blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, it's on the back burner right now for both of us. But I definitely was like, I'm not going to, if this person wants to make this for free, I'm not gonna be like, no, let me give you $500. If you're gonna volunteer, I'm gonna take it for sure. But then the second thing is I also
let's talk about that for a second. So that person you don't have a gun to that person's head. They came to you, and I don't know what their value prop is. Maybe they're building a portfolio. Maybe they really like you. Maybe they really like the content and want to see this do better, and they know an animation will help it. So we don't know why that person's doing that. So for us to assume that, we have to assume that there's a reason behind that. And it could be like, I don't want to say not altruistic, but maybe they're working on, they want to develop their skills. Maybe they do it and it airs on the podcast and someone's like, oh, I wonder who animated that. And all of a sudden, I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
So that's like, with that, I mean, here's the thing. I think if I go, I don't want this, and I think you should be paid, so I'm just going to say no, I think we both lose in that situation because the person is clearly like, they want to do the work. And it's the same way I would think about like, when gyms were still open. If I was like, working out really hard and a content creator on Twitter was like, hey, does anyone want to walk me through the basics of like compound lifts? I would jump at the chance. I would be like, yeah, sure. Let me let's link up so we can talk about it. I wouldn't be like,
why would you do that?
Just because I'm interested in talking about it to begin with. it's an opportunity to make a connection for sure, but it's also like, hey, this is something where I genuinely have interest and passion, and I could help them out by sharing that as well, not necessarily expecting anything in return, but just knowing that like I like talking about it, so I want to do it and I'm not doing anything else. But if I went to them, I would never be like, yeah, I charge $100 an hour for this kind of consultation. But I think we both lose out just because I think they want to do it anyway, to be honest. But then like the other thing is that I do like I have let's call it like one contracted employee and then an employee that I pay on a more like consistent full-time basis. Like I have a manager and publicist who gets paid like a reasonable rate. He lives in the Bay Area and he's worth it. Some months it's disproportionate in the sense that like there wasn't that much coming into the inbox. Like between like December 15th and January 15th, everybody's off. He still gets paid. Like I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to pay you for this time because nothing's coming into the inbox. And then sometimes in like November, 15 sponsored deals get set up and the man is getting underpaid to an extreme degree. So I do have a more consistent situation there. And then on a tertiary level, Kate as a musician has dealt with like the same thing. Like as a musician, to teach people, your rate might be like $50 to $100 an hour for like a kid, like an 8-year-old kid. But people will still be like, hey, I've been a clarinet player in this orchestra for like 20 years, and my niece is getting married this weekend. Would anyone be up to play like a little quartet or quintet show at the wedding? And people jump at the chance because they like to play the music, but B, it's kind of like it's not selfish because you're not getting paid, and really you're kind of donating like $200 to $500 of your time. But at the same time, it does build up your ability to run your business or run your profession in the future because of the fact that, now I've played music with these people who are in this orchestra, somebody in that orchestra is sick or they're on maternity leave. I get invited to that orchestra. I meet this person and, all of a sudden, maybe I have a steady job, basically.
Yeah, I mean, let's play devil's advocate here because I do feel like we need to represent both hard ends of the spectrum of how people feel about this. So why don't like, and I feel like can you speak on the fact that you should never work for free and why, like, and wrap your head around that so I can do that?
Yes. So this is not even devil's advocate. This is also a little nugget of like what I believe to begin with.
Yeah.
Basically, you will have to work for free at some point. Working for yourself for free is, in my opinion, always a good idea. Like the classic example for us would be like when we first started making videos, when we first started streaming, we were making no money, but it's building up our own thing. So that in that situation, you're going to have to do it to some extent. Even in school, like you're going to be paying to go to school. That's working for negative money, essentially, to get trained. But then where it gets a little bit more complicated is, should you work for other people for free? I think for sure it's a case-by-case basis. If working for that other person for free is doing something you're interested in, your financial burn rate is super low. So like you don't have to, make $4,000 a month US just to break even and, not be homeless. And on top of that, you can have like a condition where whatever you're doing also has the opportunity to grow into new stuff. And even if it doesn't, you can take that as like a piece of work that you've done and show it to other people in the future. Then I think that there can be definitely a case for that. And I think you might hold yourself back by completely refusing to work for free in all situations. So that I definitely would never say work for free no matter what. And I definitely would never say never work for free.
And I think you've helped me kind of formulate maybe a less abrasive response too, is that if you work for free, make sure that the value you're getting for it is at least as equal as to what you're putting out, if not more. And I think in a lot of the cases you can set it up so it can be more, right? So whether it's building your portfolio, working with someone you want to work with, and getting paid, I think that's probably because I think people are going to listen to this and they're going to have preconceived notions. They're like, yeah, work for free. Yeah, that's how you grind it and get in. There's going to be people listening to this be like, I'd never work for free. I'll never work for free in my life. But I think there could be some people in the middle being like, it sounds okay, but I don't really know what to do. Because I think there are people, it'd be naive to not say people that completely take advantage of people. And I think you got to know who you're working with. And to me, that would be the biggest heartbreaking thing is like, if I can't give that person more than they're giving me. And so I think you kind of nailed it. If it's something you want to be doing and maybe you don't have the opportunity to do it right now full time, or it's an industry you want to break into, my advice or my tactical advice is that like just make sure you set up something where you're getting the value. And like you mentioned, whether it's a portfolio builder, whether it's something you put on a resume, whether it's does this have an opportunity to turn into part-time or full-time or hourly or monthly work? Like these are all questions you can ask up front, and you'll know really quickly by the person answering, be like, no, there's no really chance. I just need this work done. Get rid of it. Be like, it could be like, hey, it's going to take a couple months for this to start generating revenue. When that happens, then yeah. Or, I've done stuff with people too, where it's like they're in college. I'm like, hey, look, what you would be doing for me doesn't generate any revenue. It's a huge help. Can we get with your professor and find a way to make it for credit? Just something where I'm like, look, I know this is not going to evolve into this, so I appreciate you reaching out, but what can I do? And if it works, cool. But I think at the end of the day too, is that, and I think it's important to remember, at least from my aspect, is that we're fortunate where it's not like we're forcing anyone to work for us for free. I think people know us and know that we do the right thing and do our best to always do the right thing. And I think that's something, worth mentioning, but also I don't want this whole conversation, because I know a lot it's going to be probably maybe the spiciest thing we've talked about. I don't want people to think that I'm coming from a place of, I think everyone can work for free all the time. I do think it's a certain privilege, but at the same time, like, working for free doesn't have to be what you standardly think of, like working 8 hours. It could be working 15. Maybe it's a project you do over 2 months when you have free time. And so I think leaving yourself open, if this is something you're interested in, leaving yourself open to making sure you get value from what you're doing, and also being creative in the structure and the setup and how things work, I think it can be a beneficial move for someone that's wanting to learn or get into something new.
I honestly, yeah, I do agree. Like, I think that I found the delineation point for us in terms of our opinion, for sure. I definitely would not be comfortable being like, hey, I want an unpaid intern for a bit. Make me send me your best edited clip using this as like a sample. Mm-hmm. That would make me a little bit uncomfortable, just because I'm maybe asking, like, 100 people might put in 2 hours of work each for the probability or possibility of working for free for me for later. For that, I'm like, that's a little bit uncomfortable, but I might tweet like, hey, I'm looking for an editor. Send me a sample, or, send me 4 samples of things that hopefully you've already made. And then I'll go through that and be like, let's see who the best candidate is. Like, it's not even really like, working for free is obviously bad, and working for exposure, let me rephrase. Working for free is obviously en masse considered a bad thing by the average person. And working for exposure also has extremely negative connotations. However, I think that the real thing that people have a problem with most of the time is spec work, where you almost like do something just for a job interview. Or even the worst one for sure is like when there's a contest that's like, hey, send in your fan artwork for this. If you win, we'll use it as like marketing materials for our game. So the prize that you get is actually the glorification, or it works to the benefit of the company in the first place, and you get nothing out of it except for the recognition that you won the contest. So like that's the stuff that I think that people are most annoyed about, I think, to be honest.
Yeah. No, and I think you hit it very nicely in terms of what is different. And, at the sake of being judged from the audience that's listening, to me, and I would ask you to give me how you would figure this out when it comes time to hire an editor. For me, when I had to find the video editor, and Zane was the one that kind of rose up, like I asked someone to, put a clip together. Don't spend a ton of time on it, but just send me your best effort. Like, say there were 50 people that applied to do it, 5 maybe did it, or maybe 3 did it. And to me, that was like, okay, those 47 people, either maybe their setup doesn't allow them to work for it, or maybe they really didn't want to do it. I don't know, but the only thing I know is that the people that sent me stuff, like, they all had a shot, and that it was just like, to me, that was the way of figuring out who to hire. Versus, so you would say, hey, just show me your portfolio you already have, and you're just going to pick someone from that. That's how you would.
Yeah, but I mean, it makes me seem like too much of a good guy, because again, like, realistically, there's no way I could pay an editor what they're actually worth. Like, I don't know, if you're like a video editor with a portfolio and maybe, like, I don't know, a year of experience, what's your hourly rate? It's got to be like minimum 30 or 40 bucks US dollars is what I would be thinking for somebody with that level of technical skill. If it takes you 6 hours to edit a compilation on YouTube that's going to get like 75,000 views, it's just like the economics are not there, honestly. So in some way, like, I push back on the notion that this is like exploiting creatives, I guess is the way that I would look at it. Because really, like, we're also kind of getting shafted on it. It's not a situation where like Disney is like paying their animators minimum wage and the movie goes on to make like, $750 million at the box office. It's like you put the video up on YouTube, it might make like $100. And then, if you paid the editor $400 to make it, the editor is not going to be able to, they're not going to have a job.
Yeah.
Basically.
No, I mean, it is what it is, right? It's like you pay someone to do a job for 500 and you lose 400 on it. Like, no one wins. Eventually, like, if this person wants to work with, I don't know. I just think it's really tough, because I almost feel like unless you're in a position where you have to hire people, it's really hard to, sometimes it's hard to understand, but I don't know the way. I just know it's going to be, people are going to be upset about this, but it just, I don't know another way to do it, right? Like, if you're asking me, you say, hey, Dan, I'm going to edit your video for $500 an hour, like, and the video makes $10, what do you want me to do? Like, then to me, the choice is, okay, you don't have an editor and you just put it up there, right? I don't have the answer.
You do it yourself.
Yeah.
Which is where I'm at right now. I'm like, man, I wouldn't pay somebody like $1,000 a month to do this TikTok stuff. Are you crazy? It's bringing in nothing.
Yeah.
I can do it myself, at least for now.
All right. So in terms of that, I think, I mean, I've said everything I wanted. I will say this, though, that bringing those guys on has been, like, I couldn't do what I do without those guys, or I couldn't do as much as I do to the level I do without them. And, I'm super grateful that, like, they're part of the team now. And, I'm happy, and it feels good I'm going to be honest, it feels good to be able to, like, pay someone and be like, yeah, look, like we're building something together that's growing. And guess what? As it grows, like, you're not staying the same. Like, you're like, there's, and it's not like, I can't promise them that things are going to continue to grow, but as things grow, like, it's because of their input as well and stuff they do. So I don't know, at the end of the day, like, I have I feel good about, like, I enjoy working with them. We're in a really good rhythm. Like, it feels like cool to be able to build something that you can also not take care of people, but create opportunities. So it'll be interesting to see. Do you think, like, if you had to put, as we wrap this conversation up, do you think you will hire someone before the baby is born?
I would really like to hire someone to, well, I mean, here's the piece of wisdom I heard that kind of, like, has resonated with me. And it's like, double down, like, go hard on your strengths and then outsource your weaknesses. So, like, what are my strengths? I love making content. I can make content 10 hours a day, no problem. I think I'm good at streaming. I think I make good videos. So I would love to have my work time be like 90% that, and then maybe hire to fix some of the things that I have, some of the things I have a problem with. Editing is definitely one. And also, like, to be honest, busy work, making the thumbnails, posting the YouTube videos, doing the metadata and stuff for the YouTube videos would be the big ones for me. But at the same time, I'm also like, I don't want to give anybody else that kind of access to the YouTube backend for me. I'm like, it's worth it for me for the security. almost to just be like, I'm the person that handles everything from farm to table. So I think I'd be more likely to put someone in midstream in the process, like an editor, than somebody that's like, hey, I'm the manager and I post all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and I will say I'm on the opposite end of that. Is that they have the keys to the castle? I mean, and then like,
really,
yeah.
So if they had like one bad day, they could just nuke it.
They could delete every one of my YouTube videos, and to me, like, I just trust them. And if that happens, then it happens. But I just like, I think I know them enough where if like there's a problem, they're gonna say something and we'll fix it. You know, I just, but at the same time, they didn't get the keys to the castle on day one. You know,
right.
Like, it's been a whole work in process, but I just trust them. And that's kind of how I am for the most part, is like, I'll trust someone. And then if, you know, I get burned, then it's on me. And, you know, it was nice working with you, but I'll take the blame for that. But to me, just because the trade-off is there, it's like, I enjoy working with them. And I mean, I'd be like, it could happen. We could sit here a year from now, but I would be shocked if it did. You know, but I admit, like, something, your baby you've built up over 10 years, like your analytics, all your video, like your life's work, someone could go in, select all, delete.
Be like, oh, he's one day late on the invoice.
But all right, so you think you will? If you had to say, I'm gonna hire some or not? Yes, sir.
I think it's likely, but I'm setting people's expectations. I'm also trying to like reverse engineer like some support for myself. Like, again, like, I've paid artists like crazy. You know, and again, it's not to glorify myself necessarily. Indie Mouse did the NLSS intros for free. And then when he started a Patreon, I was like, you know what? He did some work for me, so I'm going to support his Patreon. And I've been supporting that dude's Patreon $30 a month for like 7 years. I paid like $2,000 for those intros at this point. So like, I'd like to think that worked out for him. And then secondarily, like, you know, the arrangement that I have with Drac is more stable. But like, there have been months where, you know, he might make me like 15 thumbnails and he's working for peanuts for sure. There's also months where I literally don't email him at all and he makes one thumbnail and he gets paid the full stack regardless. So like, I'd like to think that we're treating people fairly for what's being done, but also like realistically. Like, this is not, we don't work at like Marvel where we're going to hire, you know, hey, you're the thumbnail guy, you make like $3,500 a month. It's just not, it doesn't make sense from an optics standpoint. So the thing is, for editors, yes, when I start to look, and I think I will start to look, you know, probably around like the end of the summer, it would be probably the kind of thing where I would be like, I would like you to make like 1 to 4 videos a month. How many hours do you think that would take, given what I'm like, the specs that I'm sending out here? And then if they were like, well, it's going to be like 20 hours, I would be like, okay, maybe like a few $100s a month is acceptable for that. If they were like, it's going to be like 100 hours, I would be like, you're not the right person for this. I have no doubt that the videos would be so slick that it would make my head explode. But the slickness of the video is going to move the needle about 2%. And in the reality of the situation is that really you kind of need like cheaper labor, at least at our level, to make that happen.
So I got 2 things I want to say before we move on to the next topic. One is, I think, to wrap things up, you got to know who you're working for, right? Like, so if you're in a position, you got to know who you're working for. And I know probably after this conversation, like, Zane and Tyler can be like, hey, Dan, can I get a raise? You know, it's gonna happen. I just know it's gonna happen. And then the second thing I want to say is that, and I don't want to get lambasted for this, but Ryan just put out on the table what he's looking for. If I was, let's just say, if I was a Daniel out there, or, you know, I want to break in, or I want to work with Ryan, he's throwing so much out there. Like, I'm just gonna say, if you want to get hired by Ryan, here's what I'm doing right now. Get your notepad out. He said he doesn't want to edit TikTok videos. What if you took 30 minutes a week and maybe you made Ryan 2 TikTok videos and you just emailed to him and said nothing, like, hey, I hope you like these, use them if you want. And you just did that every once in a while. Do you think you're going to have an advantage over other people? Or maybe he just may hire you on the spot. I'm not speaking for Ryan. I'm just saying, maybe watch one last episode of Lost and just do it. And then you're working right next to the yoke. And then he's paying you.
In keeping with that too, it's like, you know, if I was to look for an editor, like, obviously I might put out a tweet, but I would also be like, you know, there's half a dozen people that have made NLSS compilations or like edited NL compilations. Those would be the first people that I would talk to. Obviously, I wouldn't just be like, hey, you know, you used to work at Sony Pictures. Like, do you want to work with me? I would be like, these people they've already become like known entities in the community who make funny stuff, and you know, they would be the first people I would tap for sure.
All of a sudden, production value on the NLSS compilation ads just going through the roof, baby. But no, thank you. I want to thank people listening in to at least, you know, listening to the conversation objectively, and, you know, knowing that, you know, because I know my take's a little hot, but at the end of the day, I do my best. I do my best, and it's important to me to take care of people, and that I hope that regardless of my take on how I run my business, I hope that it, you know, I can't control how you feel about it, but I hope that you're still able to enjoy the content I produce, because, you know,
you're gonna be fine. Like, I'll come in harder because I like agree, but I don't want to say it. But now I'll say it is like, I do think that if your choice is like free time is important, but if you have so much free time that you're bored with the fact that you're having your leisure time, then it's probably more productive to learn a skill. And one of the ways that you can enhance learning the skill is by making someone for something that you respect. Now, it's not me saying, please do that and then send me a bunch of stuff, because I don't want to make it sound like I'm soliciting free work. And oftentimes the emails, they only have like a 10% open rate to begin with on my end. You know, it's because I got somebody already in the system making sure it doesn't get to me in the first place. But, you know, if you're like, if you're at the point where you're like, I'm actually bored with my free time, then yes, I think it can be a positive thing to have a hobby. And maybe that hobby does involve making something creative for somebody for free, but it's not like you're using your free time long-term to be like, I'm going to glorify this other person. You're like, you know what? I'll make this for someone. If they use it, that'll feel nice. And then if it blossoms into something cool, if it doesn't, it also, you know, it ends up in my portfolio. And maybe like, you know, 2 years from now, I can send that portfolio to KYR Speedy and be like, check it out. Look at look at all these like cool thumbnails I've made, and maybe that pans out, or maybe it doesn't.
I'm going to give you guys one more infiltration, Ryan's business strat. So instead of emailing it to him, just tweet it to him. Cause I don't know I'm going to speak for him on this one. I know anytime someone does fan art or edits, or the animator, like the dude that's doing the animation or whatever for Team Unity, like I see that because it stands out from like a huge wall. So if you're trying to get Ryan's attention, I would tweet it to him because he's probably going to see it. And that kind of takes me to the next step. Whoever the dude that is doing the Team Unity animation, I don't know if that's the same thing you're talking about or not. Like in my head, I'm like, I know I'm planning something special where I'm going to need an animator, and I'm not going to put out a tweet, hey, I need an animator. I'm going to go right to that guy and be like, hey, look, here's what I need. Can I hire you to do it? You know, so I don't know.
Yeah.
It kind of comes full circle. But getting off the hiring, working for free. And I will say this, like I struggled, and it's been on the docket for a long time, and I struggle to talk about because it's really like, I don't talk about anything that's like current events, like none of that stuff. But I know this is like, it can rub people the wrong way. And I hope people don't get super upset about it. But if you do, I understand. So pivoting from that, what was your biggest W for the week?
Man, I already used the merch stuff, huh? Let me give you two really quick. One is, and we haven't talked about this platform in a while, but it's been a pretty good week on TikTok. It hasn't been out of control. Normally TikTok is like, it looks like the skyline after like a nuclear bomb goes off. It's like all flat and one untouched like skyscraper with hundreds of thousands of views, right? But like this week has been more like, we were talking about it in the back channel, but it's more like base hits. Like nothing's gone super viral, but if I look at like the stuff I put up, you know, over the last like, let's say week, 34,000, 13,000, 12,000, 10,000, 38,000, 4,000, 9,000, 1,100, and the 6,500. So like that's a pretty good batting average, and I think I'm finding like, you know, more stuff that consistently works on that platform. And it's honestly just keeping the enthusiasm that we talked about in like January and February, where it's like the cool thing about TikTok is that nobody knows who you are at all. So your video's success is not guaranteed. I wouldn't say it's entirely a meritocracy, because sometimes things that we've talked about, they seem kind of crappy. Like they're not your best work, but they get picked up and sucked up into the algorithm and explode, right? But at the same time, it is just nice to it's nice to almost be out there like the Masked Singer and not have any guarantee of success and still get some positive feedback on it.
Yeah, Ryan sent me a message on the back channel that said, "Man, I'm taking all these L's on TikTok lately." And I'm like, you don't have L's. You got at least K's next to your numbers. So on TikTok, it'll say like 7K. And like for context, I look at my last 9. It's like there's no K's on it. There's like very little K's. But on the flip side, I did get a little sauce. One of the TikToks is about to hit 3 million. You know,
so that's amazing.
But I didn't even know that because I'm like looking at all these L's. But at the same time, it's just reiterating what we always say is that I almost get more excited by the fact there are no K's. There's no like multi-thousand views, because then it's like it makes me do it more. So I don't know. But it's cool to hear that you're still having fun with it. But I think what you said resonated with me is that like essentially you and I both built TikTok from zero. Like there was no extra, like sure we had some leverage from Twitch and YouTube, but essentially it's not like with my other platforms like Instagram and Twitter. I'm like, I know a lot of it's because of Big Brother, but it was cool to be able to do this from like and be like, all right, look, we know like you did this from nothing just by grinding it out and kind of figuring it out. From there.
And then I guess like the second one would be, I mean, it's a lot of like no huge dubs, but a lot of like I crushed the Dark Souls 3 DLC. Even though I'm not renowned for being like a good gamer, it's always nice when you don't get hung up on hard stuff and you make it look easier than it probably is. And like the Warzone Golden Goblet's been going really well. Been playing some fun Northernlion Tries games and like just a lot of like really like little positive stuff. You know, that's pretty much what it comes down to.
What's your take on when people watch you to be entertained versus being good at the game? Do you ever think about that? Like, oh, if I got a little bit better at this, like it'd be more entertaining or...
Dude, I'm missing one piece. I know if I could consistently get like 3 to 4 kills per Warzone game, that unique part of my audience would explode. I'm sure there's a lot of people, they start watching, they're like, it's a Warzone streamer with like a few thousand viewers. That's cool. I've never heard of this guy. And then they watch me like shoot 6 inches off of the guy's head over and over, and they're like, he's funny, but I don't want to see this garbage. If I could just get above average at Warzone, I'm thinking that's like that's like getting on the ski lift that takes you to the top of the hill.
That's my take on Twitch, right? I think you're either really entertaining or you can be really good. And I think those are two like unique reasons why people watch you, but it's like the unicorn where if you're really entertaining, really funny and good at the game, it's like, oh,
exactly.
babe, yeah, it's like, it's the rare air. All right, so you had some pretty good W's and you know your L's were pretty. You managed them.
The point of the L is always to try to learn a lesson out of it at least. You know, the same way that you said on TikTok where you post something and you're like, this is good, and it gets like 800 views. You're like, okay, well, what did I learn? Maybe this is a little bit too cerebral for a platform that people are scrolling 6 videos a second on.
All right, I'm going to give you quickly, I'm going to give you my hard L of the week. It's you and I talked about implementing like goals and things like that. So I'm on week 2 of trying new like goals on YouTube. And it started out, we had talked about last week, I talked about the beginning, middle, and end. Okay. I didn't really feel right, took that out. So I took a page from Sinvicta. On the bottom of Sinvicta's videos, he's got a little image that says, hey, like 3,000 likes and we'll do X challenge. I'm like, okay. I'm the Spelunky series. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm gonna say, all right, if we hit 296 likes, then we're going to use this special skin, the gold guy skin or whatever. And 296, just pulled it out of thin air. And I made a little image and I put it on the bottom of like 5 Spelunky videos. And so 2 problems came up. One, when when I batch record, I'm like, oh, hey, I don't know if we hit the 296 or not. So I said that like 4 or 5 times. And then after they kind of trickled down, we haven't hit the 296. So it's like, all right, did I shoot the moon? Did people not like it? Like, so I'm going to blow that up. You know, I would say it was, I'm going to try something new. I think I'm going to lower the bar a little bit. And then kind of take it from there. But I'm still trying to mess around with that. And I don't know what I was thinking by setting 296 likes, but I think I maybe need to put a little more thought.
You could always pull it down, right? Yeah. Like, why not take a at something ridiculous to start with?
Yeah. And so then it's like, without like memeing about it, then it's like, okay, maybe people don't care about the skin that I use. Maybe it's something different. So to me, it's like, all right, I'm still messing around with it. But I was definitely, I would say humbled, but it was like, okay, hey, look, like you don't got it figured out. Like the first try, keep working on it. And then another, I'd say not a hard L, but something I'm excited about that kind of came from an L. And I don't know if we may have talked about this, but it's really the only time I've ever been concerned streaming ever. You know, there was a moment in Tarkov. Did I tell the story last week or no? About being pogged up. Okay. So there's a moment in Tarkov. I'll just give quick context. I'm underneath a cliff. There's a guy.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I've seen it.
A guy above me with a sniper. I'm like, okay, I know there's a sniper above me. He doesn't know I'm here. And I'm like, blood's pumping. I'm like, all right, let's go rush him. I got a pistol. I throw a couple grenades. Blood's pumping. I run around. And then I have a pistol with no sights. And I headshot him. And I'm holding my breath. And then I explode. And then I'm like, man, I'm like seeing spots. I'm like dizzy. So I think it was a combination of like, holding my breath and then going from like 0 to 800 internally. I was like, the first time I physically ever felt anything like that streaming. So it's like a little bit alarming, a little bit, you know, and I'm not trying to make too big of a deal out of it. But what it kind of led to was that someone in chat was like, hey, do you ever think about getting a heart rate monitor for the show? And I'm like, I think it would be entertaining, but I don't want to strap a thing on. I don't want to have to set up another gadget. You know, I got enough hit technically. So someone's like, well, we could read it off an iWatch and do it. And I'm like, okay, I think it would be cool to implement if it goes above like whatever 120 beats to do it like that. But I think what kind of stemmed from it is that like health wise, I bought an iWatch yesterday, and it was oddly enough is the one day they're on sale for the year, and it was kind of cool. I learned that it can read your heart rate like and like an EKG level and keep track of it like in a health data way. So I think it was it was like something that kind of turned out as something like a little bit like a little bit concerning to be like, all right, hey, just keep an eye on this and just see what happens. But it's something I'm excited about, like just kind of pushing the show forward. And I'm not talking about leaving the heart rate monitor on all the time on the show, but I think like if I'm watching you play Warzone or someone play Warzone and like you see the heart rate shows up on screen is like beeping at 200, like, you know, like it's real, you know? So I don't
Dude, I need an eye tracker. Warzone. I'm sure if I watched my own video with an eye tracker, like in the corners, why are you looking? Like you're not looking dead ahead. You're like at the taskbar the whole time.
So those were my big L's. And in terms of win for the week, as we kind of wrap things up here, it was really kind of this morning. I talked to Wolves at my door, and he's just a really creative guy, and we were just talking about stuff, and I just felt like kind of a little bit juiced up after talking to him. And Thursdays I'll normally play Tarkov and Demon Souls, and I'm like, you know what? I want to try Spelunky, just see how it'd go. And I have no expectations about who's gonna like it, who's gonna watch it, but just play it. And I was like super shocked. Like we're playing Spelunky Death Roulette, which I found out live. The website's busted, like completely. Like doesn't like it works, but it doesn't work like it used to. And I was really surprised that like people were there that would have been there if I was watching Tarkov or not. And it's never really hit me that like I guess I assumed that like people tune in at the front end of the show to watch Tarkov, and it was a really cool moment. I didn't say anything about it in the live stream, but it just was like, wow, man, it's really cool to have that kind of support to watch me play a game from 2013 unannounced just randomly. So
I think you're doing it's Isaac strats.
What's Isaac strats?
people, they maybe got on the train to watch Tarkov when they were super into Tarkov. They got into the routine of watching you, and now they're like, oh, I'll play anything. So like, I mean, I think that I think it's a good realization to have. I think it's also like, if you talk to other, I mean, you talk to other streamers on your podcast, like I'm sure it's something that comes up a lot. Is something that I've heard a lot of as well, is people that are like not variety streamers and they got famous or they got big off of like one particular game. They always struggle trying to get their audience to watch them to play other stuff. Like if they got famous for playing League of Legends and they get like 25,000 viewers, if they play Slay the Spire, they might get like 1,500. It's like a 90% reduction, right? So I think it's a testament to building your channel, in the right way and focusing less on having like the perfect game choice for every moment. Although when you get those moments,
Ooh, baby.
Like, let me put it this way. I'm not quadrupling down on Isaac anytime soon, but when the DLC comes out, I'm not going to be like, it's Spelunky time, right? I'm going to be playing the Isaac DLC when it's at its peak, of course, like you wear your swimsuit in the summer, you don't wear it in the winter. So like, I think that, having the best of both worlds is a good thing. And the thing is, like, you pay a cost when you do that of not hopping trend to trend, and you're kind of like losing lottery tickets. Like, you didn't stream Valorant when it came out. You might have missed out on some of the Valorant hype with the drops, and there's tons of other examples, right? Like every game of the week or game of the month or, the new hotness for the year. But on the other hand, by building it more consistently, my opinion is that, you have an audience that sticks around and is not just there because of the game. And that's long-term. That's where you want to be.
Yeah. And I think like to get to your head to the point, like where you like believe that, not that I didn't believe it, but there's always a part of me, like, I know if I play Tarkov on the front end, like it's going to be good. Where it's like, if I play something else on the front, I don't know. It's just not the same level of confidence. But it just to be honest, it just felt good. It felt like, all right, hey, look, like it's just a good feeling, and I don't know, we're in such a unique industry where nothing is guaranteed, and so I have zero expectations on anything. But when something like that happens, it was just it's a kind of one of those moments. I'm like, all right, like take this moment and enjoy it, but just keep grinding from there. But all right, so as we wrap things up here, we're gonna take a few live questions from chat, and as those are dialing in. All right, this is from Frosticle. Ooh, this is an interesting one. This is for both of us. It says, what is your favorite series or content that the other person is putting out right now?
Okay. For Dan, I'm going to say not Golden Goblin because I think it's just a little obvious, like, because we've both got skin in the game to some extent. So for me, definitely watching Dan's Spelunky episodes. Like usually, like once I'm done work, we'll like eat dinner and Kate will put on YouTube, and eventually it'll get around to the Spelunky episodes, and I'm always entertained. And it's refreshing, and this is going to sound maybe insincere or backhanded, but it's refreshing to watch someone play Spelunky that is not just like they've done it all before and they know what they're doing. Like you're still discovering new stuff, and nothing is set in stone. So I think it's engaging in that way.
Well, I appreciate that. My answer to Ryan's is I enjoy watching him. I've enjoyed watching him play the Souls games, in particular. The Nameless King, because I know that's like a big moment, right? Like, like to see someone like overcome that, but also like it's part of just enjoying. I think it's why people like watching Souls. It's a challenge. It's not, you're not playing bumbo soccer. It's so to see that happen and then see you have success, I think is really cool. And I think that's an exciting thing. All right, next thing. This one is from. Oh, it's an interesting one. This is from Dolly in chat. It says, do you emulate a streamer or personality when you first started, or did you just start as yourself?
So for sure, back in like 2010, 2011, I don't know if I emulated anybody, but inspired by like, the only 6 people that were making videos about video games at the time. Like I watched a lot of AVGN. I watched a lot of like people who ended up being on like That Guy with the Glasses and stuff like that. So like a lot of like snarky, kind of like cynical people who gave commentary. But I think pretty quickly I got my own style out of that. But at first, for sure, I was like, well, this is like the stuff I like to watch is people being like a little snarky and rude while they're like playing stuff. So then like that's what I'm gonna do because I like watching it. So but then as time went on, definitely I developed my own style.
Yeah, I'm kind of in like a torn position on this. I know I watched a lot of Ryan's stuff early. And I think that like it taught me that you can at least attempt to play something and it doesn't have to be like explosions everywhere and super edited. And so I think that really helped me. But also I'd say later, seeing, and I try to watch content, but not a lot, because I never want to be like, oh, I'm doing this because this person did it. But I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of people being like, oh, this person does it this way. What is my unique take on this? And one of the things that, as I do these Doom runs in Tarkov, I didn't pull that out of thin air. There was this dude, he streams Tarkov, his name's Clean. He would do like a John Wick run where the camera would change and he played John Wick music. I don't know, I didn't know what it was. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I saw it maybe once a year ago. And then I'm like, let's spice this up. So I don't know. I take a lot of inspiration from a lot of different people, but I think I used to feel, I don't know the word for it, not bad, but like suspect about it. But then I saw this quote from Tom Hanks, and he's like, hey, if you're around people and you're working with people and you're not taking ideas for them or emulating them, then you're doing it wrong, right? Like if you see something that someone's doing something good and you have your own take on it, like of course you're going to be inspired by other people. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. It says, this is a heavy hitter. Big Halloumi on Twitch says, if you weren't streamers, what would be your ideal career?
Definitely, like I would not have known how to answer this 5 years ago, but after going through programming school, it's for sure programming. I don't know if it's my ideal career, but it would be like one that I would be happy in. Like it was it's happened only a couple of times before in my life where like when I started taking the class, everything just clicked so quickly. And I was like, it really, I've said this before, changed the way like I thought about problem solving. Like I used to think about problem solving the same way I'd play like, PUBG. It's like you fire like in the air and hope that it works. To kind of like go through programming class and realize that, the first step of problem solving is like, analyzing the problem and then taking like a little bit of time to draw out like these are the steps you would need to do in order to get to the solution. And then you've got like infinite different ways to do like each one of those steps, but there's best practices that you can draw from, and really realize that like even the biggest problem most of the time doesn't really require doing something new or outside of the box. It just requires taking maybe like instead of a 2-step problem, it's like a 100-step problem, but the steps are all like known and the same every single time. It's almost like Lego. So like definitely there's frustrating stuff about it for sure. Don't get me wrong. But when I was in programming classes, I was like, this is definitely something I could do like as a job.
Can we get Pepe hands in chat for Ryan depriving the world of his comedy? I would just like to see you like just programming and not like I thought you were gonna say like stand up or something.
Maybe. I don't know. That's hard though. Programming's easy. You just somebody else built the language for you. All you have to do is like type it. Comedy, you got to be really creative.
On my end, I don't know what I would do. I would think I'd be in the NBA playing basketball, but
right. How tall are you?
5'9". But
it's happened.
I would say probably. I mean, I don't know, teaching. I don't know. I just feel like I couldn't see myself doing anything else and being fired up about it as much as this. And then all right, last one. It says, this is from Lazaraptor. It says, how did you begin to interact with your live viewers in the early days of Twitch and streaming, now grinding the week through 4 viewers? How do you interact with such a small audience and promote growth? And you can't really speak to it. I mean,
yeah, I'm an imposter here. I kind of like, I never really had a small audience on Twitch.
I would just say, like, just continue to ask questions, and the people that are there, engage with them, right? And just it's just a long road. But the people that are there, like, it's kind of something I heard one time is like, if someone tells you no, don't waste your time trying to convince them as to why they need to buy something from you or why to make it a yes. The people that are already saying yes, just take care of them and do a great job of that, and then kind of everything else will stem from there, at least from on a tactical level.
I think you gotta really appreciate those like 4 viewers. There are streams like mutual friends that we have will stream and they'll have like less than 20 viewers sometimes. When I go in there and say something and then the streamer responds and then nobody else has said anything in chat that whole time, I'm uncomfortable. I'm like, I gotta leave. I'm not because now I feel like I'm kind of like I'm a part of the show. I couldn't just get it. Like if I'm in your chat, I can just nice shot, dummy. And then like, I can just leave and I'm like, well, chat's still going. But I feel really bad if I pop into somebody's stream and I'm like, hey, I'm having a good time watching you. And then there's no other comments for like a minute. I think it takes a special kind of person to be like, I'm going to stick around in this chat. And those people have to be, they need the attention that they deserve.
I didn't think you were gonna say that. And then all right, we'll take one more from Juan Fido. Says for now, how has this pandemic changed or not changed the way you approach your work as a streamer?
Well, here's what I'll say is that everybody assumes that like YouTube's content creators and Twitch streamers are like crushing it because everybody's at home, and there's definitely, I think there's an element of that. The worst case scenario, viewership numbers have not been hurt as badly as your business would have been hurt if you sell like a physical product with a store or something like that. But ad rates are like pretty bad right now because I think if you like reverse engineer it, companies are like, we can't sell anything and we don't even know if we're going to exist in 2 months, so we're not going to put like 250 grand into like a YouTube ad buy or something like that because we it might wipe us out. So like it has affected the bottom line on YouTube for sure. Apart from that though, like I think I'll give you a tactical and I'll give you a high mindset answer. The tactical answer is I'm open to taking more sponsored deals, and it hasn't lowered the quality of the sponsorship. I think what I've noticed, and it might just be anecdotal, I think that marketing companies have recognized that YouTubers are a little cheaper to buy right now. And instead of leading to worse deals, it's led to really good games that maybe previously thought it wasn't worth part of their budget to pay influencers to be like, now that the influencers might come a little cheaper, we can think about this. So it's almost been like a weird win-win where I'm like, business is weird right now, but I've had more sponsored deals and requests come in like April and early May than I've had maybe at any other period in my entire like YouTube career. And then the mindset answer is, I think, for me, it's just put everything into perspective that I'm lucky to be doing a job that I can still do while everything is shut down. And it's unfair because the job was like already great to begin with. And you just get like extra rewarded when something like this happens. So there's a weird little bit of like guilt, but also gratefulness that comes with that. And secondarily, just keeping everything in perspective, like, you got it pretty good. Even if there's like people making weird comments on Reddit, I'm like, at least no one in my family is sick. No one in my family is like, has the virus right now or has faced like incredible economic repercussions from it. So I would say those are the two big things.
Yeah, and I'll answer those two in reversal. As I feel super grateful is that, like I have a wife and 2 kids, and I know there's a lot of people out there that, their jobs are frozen or gone away, and just to not like have, like, I don't worry about that. Like it's a complete luxury, but I also don't take it lightly. Like I'm super grateful for the fact that like the channel's going well. And like, if I didn't have this, I don't know what I would be doing. Like I'd be maybe a little panicked. I don't know. But on the flip,
I don't mean to interrupt, but
yeah.
It's nice to like not live alone during quarantine, so that like you can lean on each other. Like I have a lot of sympathy for people that are like, when the self-isolation stuff came down, like they maybe got laid off and then also they live alone, and you're like, man, you might have had real human contact in like 2 months. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, and it's just, I think I'm just super grateful. And then also, something, I don't want to say I wouldn't consider it, but I'm also I'm also aware that I can push the gas pedal a little bit more, not because, but not because I feel obligated, but because I want to. Like I know that, whether it's emails or stuff that come in, like I don't stream on the weekends, but because of I know people are home now and I know that like there is the community, like I want to just do a little more because like it's just maybe it keeps people with their mind occupied. Like I would normally not stream on a weekend. I just that's kind of my time off with my family, but I'm doing that now because I kind of feel like, hey, look, if I can do this and distract more people and keep them entertained, then it's kind of like not a duty, but just something I want to do, right? And I, I'm sure you've gotten messages about like, hey, during this tough time, thanks for keeping things laughing, and we all have different roles to play in life, but when I get those messages, it kind of makes me take things even a little bit more serious, and not taking myself serious, but like, hey, look, if I can push a little bit more to, especially, I know we talked about the Survivor stuff, like I would not necessarily choose to stream reality TV given like everything, how much I've been fighting against it. But to me, it's like, all right, look, if people get excited about it, like let's just do it and have fun with it. So I think that's the other thing. Like I'm pushing a little bit more and not necessarily like focusing on growth or for myself or for the business, but more for just like, hey, look, this is an opportunity where people may not have something to watch or whatever, and just do it. So I think that's been something a little bit different. But with that being said, another long podcast.
It's a longer podcast than usual. Yeah. What else is new?
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it if you've been listening after the fact on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. If you rate and review, it helps spread the love for the show. It's like hitting the like button on youtube.com/Northernlion when Ryan posts this video. Which side note, how have the views been on the podcast for you?
I'm a bad person to ask right now because I post them Saturday morning and then log.
Okay. So if you want to watch the videos, youtube.com/Northernlion. But as always, the audio goes live 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate you guys being here, and we will see you guys next week.